I'm Tony Ann Cruz, an ACTEC fellow from New York City, and I'm here today with another ACTEC fellow, Elizabeth Glasgow from Los Angeles, California. Today's topic is when and how to use prenuptial agreements. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Morning.
So, what couples should have a prenuptial agreement in place before marriage?
So I get asked that question a lot, and I sometimes think it's actually a little bit of a funny question to ask because the truth is that all couples have premarital agreements once they get married. The question, though, is whether or not they're accepting sort of the cookie cutter state issued premarital agreement that just comes right off the shelf and what they're agreeing to simply by getting married. Or do they want to have really what is a customized agreement for them that takes into account, who they are as a couple, what is unique about them, and really the assets that they have coming into their marriage and what will happen during their marriage. And for almost all purposes, I think, isn't customization always best? So I'm a big proponent of couples making something that's appropriate for them, that takes into account their unique characteristics. But it does make sense, of course, certain couples are more unique than others. And so oftentimes we see customized premarital agreements used most commonly for perhaps couples who are bringing together a blended family, where maybe one or both of the individuals have children from a prior relationship. Oftentimes couples who have a lot of assets already created before the marriage, or those who are just really wanting to be proactive in making sure they both understand the financial contract of their marriage.
That's a great way to think about it. I really like that approach. And so, in your view, what is the most important things for a prenuptial agreement to cover?
Sure. So a lot of people think about a premarital agreement as, dealing with the ultimate dissolution of their marriage if unfortunately they're not successful. That's what most of the state law is based around, and that's what a customized premarital agreement would address as well. So the two main topics that will usually be included in that are how to divide up assets. That's both the assets that perhaps one or both of the parties brought into the marriage, as well as the assets that they've gotten during the marriage, whether it's from their work, their investments, perhaps gifts or inheritances that they receive. And then the other big topic, and one that a lot of people really do customize premarital agreements for, is what we call alimony or spousal support. That sort of ongoing financial entanglement that couples have if there's a circumstance where one of them at the end of a marriage does need continuing financial support from another. It's very common to see a premarital agreement shorten perhaps the duration or amount of that alimony or spousal support.
That makes sense. Do you have any suggestions for how a client could raise the idea of a premarital agreement with their fiancé and sort of when in their relationship it would be appropriate to do so?
Oh, this is a really tough one because it sometimes can be a very tense topic. The discussion around premarital agreements, I think, is really just a continuation of hopefully what's a very healthy discussion around finances in general. I'm sure a lot of divorce attorneys would tell us that the inability for a couple to communicate about finances and what each person's expectations are is a big leader to divorces. But if you are already having a lot of conversations about finances, premarital agreement becomes a natural continuation of that. It's an opportunity to say, all we're doing is, establishing expectations for ourselves in this customized agreement.
Great. Yeah. So they've had the awkward conversation, they brought it up, it all went well. And so at what point should the couple then start engaging in the actual process where they go out and find lawyers, start agreeing to terms or discussing them at home? I mean, really, what are your thoughts on timing for that?
Yeah, this is a really delicate balance because, of course, it's happening at the same time that is perhaps the happiest part of your relationship, the excitement of going from being a couple to getting married as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a timing perspective, we always want to be cognizant that you don't start too early and you don't start too late. So too early would be that if you're, not even engaged yet, or perhaps have just gotten engaged and you're already signing paperwork. And the reason that that is too early is that a lot might happen between the signing of the premarital agreement and the actual wedding that would have been material for the discussions and negotiations. Perhaps there's a new job opportunity, an inheritance, something that really should have been taken into account, and you miss the opportunity if you've done it too soon. You also, though, don't want to wait too late, because you'd hate to have a circumstance where one of the couple feels like the wedding is days away and they don't have a chance to really bring up points that are important to them because they're worried about being embarrassed if somehow this means the wedding doesn't happen, or they feel a little bit bullied in the process if it gets too close. So an ideal timeline is to really start the hiring of attorneys not long after the engagement, getting some of the key terms hashed out before invitations go out, and definitely signing a couple of weeks before the actual wedding date.
Great advice. Thank you. And so what state law would you suggest a couple have apply to their premarital agreement? We have couples all over the place. Let's say that it's a couple that's intending to get married in one jurisdiction and live in another, or they're a couple who have assets kind of all over the country. What jurisdiction would you, or how would you advise them to choose a jurisdiction?
Absolutely. We don't want the premarital agreement to discourage anyone from having a destination wedding. I know I love those. So it really should be primarily your home jurisdiction. Where do you plan to be a married couple living, full time as you start your married couple life? That's not to discount the fact that, of course, if you do have an expectation of relocating during the marriage, that you would want to make sure that an attorney in that other jurisdiction does take a look at the key terms of the agreement. And that would be the same if you have significant assets elsewhere. Have the home jurisdiction govern, but still make sure somebody takes a look from another location.
That makes sense. Thank you so much. This was a really helpful and practical discussion. I think this will be very useful for a lot of folks. But I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thanks for joining us today, Elizabeth, and taking the time.